This video sets out 10 safety requirements that parents and teachers should demand before their K-12 schools reopen. These are separate from whether the local COVID infection rate justifies reopening and go beyond the obvious of limiting class size and promoting distancing and hygiene. I'm an attorney whose job requires research into medicine and safety. My children are poised to start 5th and 6th grade, not taught in a classroom. In researching whether jury trials could start again safely, I've seen that the CDC and scientists around the world have recommended that we reduce the risk of COVID transmission by making our indoor spaces less COVID friendly. Sadly, these recommendations and the whole idea of modifying our indoor spaces have been underreported by the media and underappreciated by policymakers while we struggle against this virus. What follows is tailored to schools, but also applies to our courtrooms and our businesses. It's about depriving this virus of the physical environments it needs to thrive. Now, this is an excerpt from the letter sent July 6th by 239 scientists to the WHO urging recognition of aerosol transmission. It recommends using better ventilation, air purification, and UV light to minimize aerosol transmission of COVID. The 60-page report on school reopening by the Harvard School of Public Health in June made similar recommendations. And so does the CDC in its guidelines on COVID and buildings. Improved ventilation, portable air purifiers, UV light. What does this mean practically, and why is it important? Here's what the experts say. Infected people, including those with no symptoms, can expel both larger droplets that usually fall to the ground within 6 feet and smaller droplets that can float in the air for hours, travel much further than 6 feet, and penetrate masks. The more these smaller droplets accumulate in what I'll call infected air, and the more time we spend in that air, the greater the risk of infection. This is a diagram showing the larger droplets and the smaller ones that are commonly called aerosols. Aerosol transmission is unlikely with low accumulation or short exposure, and aerosols disperse outdoors, which is why outdoors is so much safer. Aerosol transmission explains the terrible outbreaks we see in places like meat plants and prisons. Despite knowing all this, our reopening plans focus on modifying our habits, but not our indoor spaces. We've gotten the memo that the outdoors is safer than the indoors, but we've done almost nothing to make our indoors more like our outdoors. That has to change. Now, masks have proven tremendously effective overall, but it's not clear how effective they are at stopping transmission from aerosols versus the larger droplets. That's why it's crucial that we do both things indoors, wear masks and prevent the accumulation of infected indoor air. If we used that two-pronged attack in all our indoor spaces, we might crush the COVID curves everywhere in this country. So here are the 10 points. Number 1, everyone inside the school wears masks. But children in particular need breaks when they can go outside or in small groups to a large space like a gym or an auditorium and remove the mask while distancing. 2, set the HVAC system to maximize both the rate of ventilation and the use of outside air. In other words, bring new air in and old air out of every room as quickly as possible. Disable automatic ventilation controls if necessary to do that. Most systems provide new air to a room by mixing outside air with recirculated air. The outside air should be maximized up to 100%, and the system should be run before and after the school is occupied. Number 3, maximize natural ventilation. That's the quickest way to get infected air out of a room. Just like you do when you burn something and you want to get the smoke out before the detector goes off. Either a fan or a breeze blows air in one window and out the other. Now, unfortunately, the CDC makes it easy to forego natural ventilation due to unacceptable temperature or humidity or a risk of falling out a window. But if you see how COVID is spiking in all of the places where people are sealed up in airtight, air-conditioned spaces, then running fans when it's hot, wearing a sweater when it's cold, and putting in window bars all seem like better ideas than leaving the windows closed. If you're lucky enough to have ones that open, use them. Number 4, avoid having stationary occupants poorly positioned in airflows produced by ventilation. This is a diagram that shows diners in a restaurant getting infected because they were in an airstream with an infected person between an air conditioner and an exhaust duct. So plan your configurations and consider repositioning students and teachers during the day. Number 5, make sure the HVAC system is inspected and cleaned before school starts, and then promptly test it. One way to test ventilation rate is to measure the carbon dioxide level in a full classroom. Number 6, if the HVAC system uses recirculated air to a significant degree, it should have high-grade filters or UVC light to either capture or destroy the virus. If recirculated air is minimized, these installations are probably not worth it. Number 7, in small spaces where ventilation is subpar, consider using portable air purifiers. They use HEPA filters or UVC light to capture or destroy COVID aerosols. But they have varying capacities to process air, and they need to be matched either individually or in a combination with room size. Number 8, another alternative, UVC light, which has been shown to deactivate airborne virus in either seconds or minutes, depending which study you read. Generally, they'd be used when teachers or students are taking a break from the classroom, because lengthy exposure can harm skin or eyes. But this method has been used in occupied spaces by keeping the light above 7 feet and then circulating the air high and low with fans. Number 9, minimize air conditioning, maintain humidity. AC feels like great ventilation, but it has 3 big negatives. Number 1, most respiratory viruses like cooler air. Number 2, AC dehumidifies air. That evaporates the larger droplets down to aerosols. Number 3, when people turn on the air conditioning, they close all the windows. Those last 2 negatives also apply to dry heated air in the winter. Number 10, make microphones available to all teachers and students who have to address the whole class. This will improve communication with masks and reduce the forceful speaking that projects more viral particles. Remember, 1 2.5 hour choir practice had more than half of the 60 singers get infected and several died. 6-foot distancing, sanitizers, and partial dividers don't protect against infected air. We can't test every child every day, and temperature checks may not help that much because many children will be asymptomatic. That's why it is essential that parents and teachers and policymakers demand that schools follow both universal indoor masking and recommended methods of preventing the accumulation of infected air. It's combining PPE with what I'll call MMP, mechanical means of prevention. We should do this in all our indoor spaces. You can help by forwarding this link, spreading this message. We want safety going viral, not our schools.